and supporters have faced extraordinary pressure and restrictions. Whatever one thinks of Khan's politics, the fundamental issue is much bigger than him alone. No political leader should be imprisoned and excluded from public life through a process that fails to meet basic international standards of fairness and due process. But it's equally important to understand why millions of Pakistanis continue to stand with Imran Khan. To his supporters, Khan represents something larger than a political party. He's a national hero who first brought Pakistan extraordinary pride on the world stage as a cricketer, devoted himself to philanthropy and public service, and then challenged a political system that many Pakistanis believe have failed them for generations. They see in him the possibility that Pakistan's future should be decided by its people, not by coercion, intimidation, or the imprisonment of political opponents. But there should be no mistake that today we are here to talk about this matter as a question of his human rights, as well as the humanitarian concerns relating to him and his wife's wrongful detentions, illegal detentions, and mistreatment and even torture while spending time in prison. Today, you'll hear from two people for whom this is not an abstraction or a political argument. They're Imran Khan's sons, and their father is in prison, and I'm honored to introduce them. First, we'll hear from his sons, as I said, Kasim and Sulaiman, and then we'll hear from Zulfi Bukhari, former minister in Khan's office when he was prime minister, and current advisor to Imran Khan on international affairs and international media. In the meantime, as we have these opening remarks, which will also be followed by several of my own, we will then take questions from those attending the webinar. If you can put your name and affiliation in the chat box and either put a question you'd like us to pose or just simply indicate that you are interested in speaking. Once we are done with our presentations, we'll then begin to call on people, unmute them, and give you the opportunity to ask any questions you might want to ask. So with that, thank you very much. And Kasim, over to you.
Thanks, Jared. So I just want to say a few words that I've prepared. So the first thing I'd say is my father is mentally the toughest person I've ever met. He's spent 22 years being laughed at in politics before finally winning an election. He survived a brutal assassination attempt and has faced multiple. Now he's endured nearly 3 years in solitary confinement without breaking. But his body's paying the price for what's being done to him. He's 73 years old. He's held in a cell roughly 6 feet by 8 without windows or natural light. He's often held there for more than 23 hours a day. When his vision failed last October, they gave him eye drops for 3 months. By the time he was properly examined in February, he'd lost most of the sight in his right eye. Last week at Pakistan's Supreme Court, the judge said that the medical board's own report showed his pulse and heart rate were not normal. And finally, that his vital organs had started to be affected. No one's health should be harmed because they're in prison. The Supreme Court recognized this and ordered that our father be treated in a hospital. We ask that the government abide by this choice and let independent doctors treat him, produce his medical records, and let us speak to him, his children.
Thank you, Kasim. I wanted to tell you what this has meant for our family. My brother and I have not been able to visit our father for years. Our visa requests have gone nowhere, and the phone calls we used to have were irregular, short, and often monitored. But for the past 6 months, we haven't spoken to him once. Until the court intervened this month, our family had been denied access to him for nearly 10 months. What my father is going through is a violation of his human rights. And we're not alone in saying this. The UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, the UN Committee Against Torture, and the Inter-Parliamentary Union have all formally taken up our father's case. Members of the US Congress and the UK House of Lords have spoken. This week, 21 former international cricket captains, including the greatest names of Indian cricket, wrote to Pakistan's Prime Minister asking that he receive medical care. And our mother asked the British government how much longer it will remain silent. The entire world is asking Pakistan to do one thing: obey its own courts.
Thanks so much, Sulaiman. Zulfi, over to you.
You're on mute, Zulfi.
Sorry. As Sulaiman and Kasim have stated of where they are in terms of what's happened in the past few days, I'll just add to this is that This is not just a contempt of court, it's a complete mockery. The Supreme Court of Pakistan, which is the highest court of the land, has ordered certain things to be obeyed by. The first and foremost was to take him to Shifa International Hospital. That was not the case. He was taken to a public hospital. And not only was he taken to a public hospital, they played tricks with the court, you can say. Something that not even maybe a 16-year-old child would do. They made Imran Khan's personal physician who runs his cancer hospital, who the Supreme Court, again, had ordered for him to be in the medical board. They made him go first to Shifa International, and then they deceived him and everybody else and the Supreme Court of Pakistan and took him to what's called PIMS Hospital, is a government hospital in Islamabad. So there's one thing trying to stand your ground saying, oh, we don't want him to go to a private hospital, which the Supreme Court has said. But another thing that you're actually deceiving the one person that the Supreme Court has put as an independent doctor of Imran Khan as his physician in that medical board. So you can see that the clear intentions that this government has tried to play. After that, he was only taken to hospital for a few hours. There was, again, a complete mockery of tests. It was done in unbelievable time where all these conditions that Kasim and Sulaiman have laid out was all of a sudden tested. In fact, one of the reports has been leaked by journalists stating that, they would like a CT scan of his heart and so on. And they turned around and said, well, the machine's not working. And now we're hearing contrary reports that the machine was working. But why didn't they take these tests then? Why, even if they disobeyed the court and took him into a public hospital, a government hospital, why did they not keep him there for at least 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours for tests to be done, the results to be given back, and then a medical, the medical procedure thereon? Why wasn't his doctor involved the way that the Supreme Court has ordered for him to be? It shows you the fear. It shows you that they don't want Imran Khan to be out of jail for even a few hours, let alone a few days of what the court has ordered. And at the same time, now just before we just about to start this press conference, we're getting news that they're trying to take out Shifa International altogether and only take him to this public hospital. Why? And that's the biggest question. Because they want to take him to places that they can manipulate. They don't want him to be anywhere that is independent and renowned, and where doctors might say, look, we're private doctors, we're going to say the truth of where his conditions are, his health is, and what needs to be done to rectify it. At the same time, I just want to end on one thing, that do remember that this is the same Imran Khan that during our government, I was part of the cabinet, Imran Khan was magnanimous enough, and I've always said that he's extremely magnanimous, that when Nawaz Sharif, the brother of a former Prime Minister of Pakistan, the brother of the current Prime Minister, the father of the Chief Minister, who's causing a huge fuss about Imran Khan going to hospital, allowed him to travel abroad, to go to London for what we saw was just a made-up health issue. But because there was concern over it, and they said that the treatment can only be in London, he was allowed to travel to London. So I think just to give you the comparison of the two, of Imran Khan and where we see today, I do want to take this opportunity and thank all sections of the media and thank all sections of the public. And even I want to thank all sections of the political sphere that have, opposition parties from Pakistan People's Party. Mr. Bilal Bhutto and his team have even said that we don't want to do politics on someone's health. We don't want to do politics on Imran Khan's health. We are happy to abide by, and the government should abide by, what the Supreme Court of Pakistan has said. JUI, Maulana Fazl Rahman's party, again has said the same thing, that we don't want to play politics on Imran Khan's health. We should abide by what the Supreme Court of Pakistan has said. Ultimately, this is a litmus test for the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and all of Pakistan and its people, nationally and internationally, are just looking at the Supreme Court and hoping that they will stand their ground. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Zulfi. Let me just offer some brief remarks of my own. As has been discussed, Justice Shahid Waheed's three-judge bench ordered Khan transferred to Shifa International Hospital within 48 hours, and that he be hospitalized, and ordered an independent medical board with a cardiologist, physician, a general surgeon, an internal medicine specialist, an eye specialist, and Khan's own doctor, Dr. Faisal Sultan, to take part. It ordered his medical records to be produced, weekly family meetings, and calls with his sons. And at the hearing, Justice Waheed said the medical board's own report showed that his pulse and heart were not normal. And of course, that deadline has long since passed. And as has been widely reported, after midnight on August 20th, he was taken to PIMS, a government hospital, while this decoy convoy went to Shifa, where Dr. Sultan waited for former Prime Minister Khan, his patient, for multiple hours, and he never arrived. And at the end of the day, of course, it was just a few hours later that, with limited testing, no independent board meeting, and a simple conclusory declaration that he was medically fit, that he was back in Adiala prison by 5 a.m. PIMS refuses to disclose the report, and his sister, who was present, has said publicly the checkup was not thorough. At the end of the day, the government of Pakistan has thrown the country into a constitutional crisis. If the Supreme Court of Pakistan makes an order, like in any country in the world where a Supreme Court acts, and you have a system of divided government, of a legislative, executive, and judicial branch, where you have separation of powers, right, and where you have the ability of the different branches of government to check each other, if you have the executive branch ignoring the judicial branch and a very clear order that was issued, then this is the kind of thing that really breaks the Constitution, and where the Constitution is not capable of addressing what is going on. I would also note as well, quite importantly, that the conditions in which Mr. Khan have been held, based on my experience as a human rights lawyer who's been working on political prisoner cases for more than 20 years, are some of the worst conditions that I've seen imposed on a political prisoner in my career. That's worth emphasizing because I've worked in some 25 countries around the world and in a wide array of brutal dictatorships, right? It isn't just that, that he is a political prisoner and that he has been subjected to literally hundreds of investigations and a never-ending slew of cases that are all politically motivated. But the extraordinary mistreatment in prison, the denial of medical care, the maintenance in solitary confinement, the conditions within the cell itself are really, beyond deplorable and a flagrant violation of the standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners, which are also referred to as the Nelson Mandela rules. And of course, many of these violations also violate Pakistani law. It's important to emphasize that it's not just myself as his lawyer or his local counsel or the family condemning what has been going on with Imran Khan, but we have very strong support from the United Nations. In March 2024, the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention found his detention to be arbitrary, illegal, and politically motivated, and said that the appropriate remedy would be an immediate and unconditional release, as well as compensation for his wrongful detention. The UN Special Rapporteur on Torture sent a formal communication to the government of Pakistan, raising enormous concerns about him, as well as later his wife, and she issued multiple public statements about his solitary confinement and his mistreatment. We also have seen that the UN Committee Against Torture, which oversees the government's implementation of the Convention Against Torture, a treaty that is signed and ratified, named both Khan and his wife in a report that they issued this past summer, and raised especially the lack of access to medical care as a serious issue under the Convention Against Torture, and demanded that Pakistan report back to it in short order about what was going on. We've also seen, for example, the Inter-Parliamentary Union, by unanimous decision, April 2026, recall that the detention is illegal, call for his release, and seek to undertake a mission to go to Pakistan. The bottom line is quite simple. Proper medical treatment and care is the bare minimum a prisoner should be accorded under international law. The Supreme Court's order should be immediately implemented, but let's not forget that hospitalization is not the same thing as what Imran Khan and his wife are actually owed, which is, of course, their immediate and unconditional release. So at this point, we want to open up the floor for questions, and please indicate an interest and willingness as well in the Zoom Q&A function, or raise your hand, and we will call on you and then direct the question to whoever the appropriate person that you might be. Again, a reminder, please keep the questions brief, and also identify yourself and your affiliation as well. So let's give a moment here for people to potentially indicate their interest in asking questions. Let me see here. We've got some people raising their hands. So why don't we turn it over first to Deepjoy Das, and I'm unmuting you right now.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, hello. My name is Deepjoy Das. I represent Asian News International from India. So first, my question, I have two questions in my mind. First is for Kasim Sulaiman. So my first two questions are, since your father and the former Prime Minister has been under so much torture and everything, and the human rights violations has been going around with him. So do you think that now, since the Pakistani government is doing all these things, do you think that this is turning to a dictatorship, like the way that the Pakistani government is actually going with his case and everything they're dealing with? Do you think that it's actually turning into a dictatorship kind of a way that the current Pakistani regime is actually working on, like how they're dealing with this case? And my second question is for Jared, for you. Is that since you guys have already filed the plea for the contempt of court on that for not abiding with the Supreme Court's ruling. My question was that what is your next step then? Now after that, what is how you're gonna convince the international committee, and how you gonna what is the next step for the international community to divert the focus on this issue, especially during a time when Pakistan is trying to meddle into the geopolitics with the help of getting into the pockets of US with the help of the US with Iran war in that context. Like, these are the two questions. Thank you.
So Kasim and Sulaiman, do one of you want to take Deepjoy's question?
Yep. Sulaiman, did you catch the final part of the question? It was a bit muffled for me.
I think the first part of the question was, does it seem like Pakistan's sliding towards a dictatorship? And I would say, with some of the actions we've seen, yeah, I think undoubtedly you can see, the influence of the military in a lot of these the torture and the arbitrary detention, our father's general conditions. I don't think there's any doubt that it's the whole establishment that are involved.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to that point, that the actions that we're seeing taken on Imran Khan and his wife's cases, right, are not the actions of a healthy, functioning democratic government, right? When you're talking about bringing hundreds of cases against a person on fabricated charges and being able to ultimately convict them, this isn't what you would see in a typical democracy in any respect. And it's important to emphasize that there are thousands of political prisoners in Pakistan, not just Imran Khan, right? And you're talking about repressing the fundamental human rights of thousands of activists, but also just the wider population, and all the ways in which the entire system is being manipulated in order to maintain an iron grip on power. There's no doubt that the General Munir is running an authoritarian regime. It doesn't really matter quite much what you label it, but at the end of the day, any democracy that is at least somewhat functional, right, is capable of providing fundamental human rights to its people, will abide by human rights treaties that they've signed and ratified as being part of domestic law, and ultimately, they'll also allow for free and fair and periodic elections to take place, which is, again, not something that took place with Khan's illegal disqualification to run for office on the basis of his wrongful detention. You also asked as well about our future plans. What I would say is the following. We're obviously not going to on this call broadcast exactly what we intend to do. I'm sure that's probably well understood, but I can assure you that we are embarking on a sustained campaign of legal, political, and public relations advocacy actions that are designed to ensure that people meet Sulaiman and Kasim, that they hear what's going on with their father and what he is going through, what his wife is going through, and obviously as well to engage a wide array of people at multilateral organizations with national governments and civil society more widely to focus on what's happening in Pakistan. To me, Imran Khan's case is a bellwether for the direction the country is heading in. With him in prison, it's very clear that the regime is trying to send a message to the people of Pakistan that they better not stand up, right? And imagine if we can do this to Imran Khan, who everyone in the world knows about, right? What can we do to you, someone who the world doesn't know about, right? And this is meant intentionally to threaten, intimidate, and harass anybody who might dare to speak up against the regime. So we will know that Pakistan is on a better course when Imran Khan is free, when he can speak his mind, when he can return to his family, when he can return to his people. And right now, as long as you see Imran Khan in jail, the direction that the country is taking is a terrible one, and one that is not grounded in the support of the people of the country. So let me just leave it at that. We've got a number more people to ask questions. Next is Sabi Kazmi, and I'm unmuting you so that you can speak. And please first identify yourself and your affiliation. You need to unmute.
Thanks, Jared. My question to Kasim Khan, it's very simple, but I have been spoken this many times in my vlogs. Your father, Imran Khan, has been in prison for the last 3 years, including nearly 9 months in solitary confinement. And there is evidence of torture, and reports from the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Alice Jill Edwards, it's very clear. You have already spoken at many forums, including the UN, but seems like Donald J. Trump's favorite field marshal is not taking any consideration at all. Now, we know that you're not a politician and have always stayed away from politics, but the situation is very serious right now, and you are the only strongest voice for your father and his supporters currently have. Your father has millions of supporters in Pakistan and large overseas community, excuse me, overseas community especially, of more than 10 million people in the US, UK, and Europe who are ready to act. Now, given how critical things have become, are you prepared to take the lead in a global campaign by raising your father's case, not only in the UN human rights bodies, which you have already done, but also in the major cities, and like being collaborated with overseas Pakistanis to push for his basic rights, proper medical care, and freedom? Because currently, there is no leadership left.
Thanks, Sabi. What I've always said is our father was and always has been very, very much against dynastic politics. It's one of the reasons that kind of Pakistan has been run into the ground the way it has, if you look at history. And I'll do whatever I can. Me and Sulaiman will do whatever we can to make sure that we can try and get him out, try and rectify what's happened over there for us to have a father again, and for the people of Pakistan to have their elected leader in charge, and hopefully cure Pakistan of these crooks and this kind of the corruption that's kind of ruining it, as we can all see. But I don't believe in dynastic politics the same way my father didn't. So, once he is able to get back in power, hopefully, which is seems a long way away, hopefully the next candidate who comes in will be the most popular person and the kind of right candidate for the job.
Thanks so much, Kasim. So now we have a question in the chat box from Reuters. from Ariba Shahid. She actually has a number of different questions, so I'm going to ask them one at a time. I think they're all very relevant questions and kind of direct them accordingly. The first question is, are you moving towards international litigation or legal procedures? First, perhaps Zulfi, if you want to first address what's going on domestically right now with the contempt petition before the Supreme Court, and then I'll speak more broadly to the international litigation question.
Well, for contempt today, and yesterday it was submitted, but it hasn't been accepted yet. We believe it will be, if it hasn't already, by tomorrow. There was a few objections to the application and to the submission, and those have, I think, now been taken out and resolved. So we're waiting for it to be registered. But like I said, there's a big push for it to be shifted to this new court that was made recently, FCC, which basically undermines the Supreme Court in its entire bench and judges. Basically, when you can't get an order out of the Supreme Court, then you move it to this FCC and try to get the order by hook or by crook in that court. And that's what it seems that they're trying to do, or they will try to do by the end of it.
Thanks, Zulfi. On the international litigation side, as noted earlier, we've already won Imran Khan's case before the UN Working Group on arbitrary detention, which declared his detention illegal and in violation of international law and demanded his immediate and unconditional release. For our purposes, that's really all we needed to vindicate the fact that Khan's detention is based on fabricated cases that entirely lack any substantive evidence. So there really isn't much to do when it comes to international litigation as such. But I will say that we're definitely looking at further mechanisms at the United Nations and to look to engage them very directly. We obviously also want to engage the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk. He should be involved in these cases. And obviously we'll look to any other options that might be available to us. I think the bottom line is that and if there was one message to come from this press briefing, I would say is the following, which is, we're going to leave no stone unturned in terms of doing everything we can to pile the pressure on the back of General Munir and the Pakistani regime, and to make sure they hear everywhere they go, leaders in the cabinet and the general himself, that the world is focused on what's going on in Imran Khan and is demanding that not only he and his wife be immediately and unconditionally released, but all political prisoners in Pakistan. The next question from Ariba Shahid is directed to either of you, Kasim and Sulaiman, which is, do you have any plans to travel to Pakistan anytime soon? And are you concerned over your potential safety in Pakistan?
Sorry. We would we'd obviously love to come. We at this point is getting more and more bleak, the situation in Pakistan, and I'd love to be able to see my father. We haven't seen him in a long time, but our visas have been denied. Essentially, they were stalled and effectively rejected. So even if we were intent on going, there is no way we can. And despite any of the kind of potential threats, when we initially wanted to go to Pakistan, there was a statement that came out saying that we'd be arrested, that was quickly deleted on Twitter from one of the government officials. So we would love to go no matter what, despite all of those potential threats. At this point, it's looking more likely than not that he won't be able to survive his stay in prison, and so any chance to see him, we would take in a heartbeat.
I just want to add one thing to what Kasim has said, his ending sentence, is that his father himself, when he was with his sister in the government hospital PIMS, had compared what is happening to him with Morsi. And I think everyone here today understood what happened to his fate and his slow death and the treatment that he was received in prison and the result of that. So the fact that Imran Khan, who everyone knows is larger than life, super optimistic, as brave as anyone can be, but when he is saying that what is happening to him is directly comparable to Morsi, I think that tells the grave story that we're in today.
And sorry, can I just add as well, to hear reports that his blood pressure has risen due to anxiety and stress was really, really concerning for me personally, because I've never throughout my whole life of known him to be an anxious or a stressed person. In fact, I'd say he's probably the least anxious person that I've met. So it's just indicative of the treatment and the torture that he's been receiving.
Thank you all for that, and I think this also just reinforces the urgency of the situation that he's facing, and that countless other political prisoners are facing as well. This is not one of these circumstances or situations where you can bide your time and wait it out, right? This is slow motion murder is the way that I would put it, and it's among the worst kinds of circumstances that I've seen over my career as a human rights lawyer, in terms of how shocking and appalling it is that he's being treated, and how inconsistent with Pakistan's own law and constitution, as well as the Nelson Mandela rules. One last piece of the question from Reba Shahid, and then I'll go back to questions for people who've raised their hand. And I'll direct this one to Zulfi. The question is, what's being done? What's the family doing to lobby support for Khan outside of Pakistan? And how confident are you that this support will move authorities in Pakistan?
Look, we've traveled before to Geneva, to UN. All of us, the sons have done an individual trip to US. I have done a trip to the US, and we've got some big plans in the coming month. The next couple of months, I think it's going to be extremely hectic and nonstop for all of us, because at the very beginning, 3 years ago, I think Kasim and Sulaiman will agree, it was started off as injustice and illegal cases thrown upon him, which actually at that time were laughable. Now it's completely changed, and it's become non-political. It's about his life, it's about his health, it's about regular access to him and the rights that he should have whilst he's serving his sentence in prison and his cases are being taken up. I just want to remind everyone that what we thought was a relief from the Supreme Court in terms of him going to Shifa International was only because it was at the Supreme Court. All his cases that he's been convicted of were kangaroo courts set up within the prison premises. We've been pushing his lawyers teams, his legal team in Pakistan, many of them for over 100 odd cases, are pushing for them to go to the higher courts, because that's where they feel they'll find justice. And so it started off with getting those pushed and about the illegal cases upon him. But now it's just about what this whole plea is, and our entire lobbying is going to be about his life and about his health. And the coming months are going to be extremely hectic all around the world.
Thanks so much, Sulfi. We'll now move back to the questions in the, among participants in the discussion that we're having. Next up is M. Hashmi. I'm going to unmute you, and if you could first identify yourself and who you work for.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. My name is, as you mentioned, I have been working for the BBC, and I've covered this story many a time. I've also interviewed Imran Khan in the past, and I know Jemima really well. Just to kind of show you a little bit about who I am. My question is directly to Kasim and Sulaiman. Initially is absolutely not on any political line, but have you thought of, or perhaps are planning to contact the extremely large PTI communities across the UK? I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of them. There's presidents and local community members and activists. They've got a proper system, and I'm wondering if you sent a direct, maybe one generic direct email or letter to them from an emotional point of view, because if they mobilize that community, and then perhaps you can send them like a template that they can send on to MPs, 100,000. This will then start a conversation in Parliament, and if hundreds of thousands of Pakistanis in the UK raise that, with their MPs, I can't see how that, some kind of difference can't be made. That's my one question. And the only other thing that I have is, I know previously, before his arrest, he was offered the opportunity to leave the country, and he denied that opportunity. And I've been reading in the Pakistani press that that is something that the government are looking into now, if he can go and seek a medical support abroad. Is that still the case, or is that just made up news story? And very lastly, President Trump had a very good relationship with Imran Khan. He spoke very highly of him when he was a prime minister. I do know that his relationships with the current administration is very positive because of what's happening in Iran. But I wonder if any direct connection or contact has been made with the president himself to see what his viewpoint is on this.
So let me ask Kasim and Sulaiman, why don't you respond to the first question, and then I'll ask Zulfi to respond to the second and third question. Kasim and Sulaiman.
Yeah, so we went to America to speak with overseas PTI supporters and communities, and it somewhat connects with your latter question, where we did speak to many politicians in America, across America, with a route potentially to speak to Donald Trump. The issue with all of our efforts, we thought we were making some kind of headway, but from a business perspective, it just didn't make sense for Trump. Clearly, whether or not he had kind of a personal affiliation or friendship with our father, it didn't necessarily seem to make the difference because of how the kind of Pakistani establishment, I would say, kind of groveled at the feet of America. They offered the natural minerals and resources from Pakistan. They elected Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. They offered cryptocurrencies. They offered absolutely everything they could just to make sure that he was on their side at the cost of Pakistan and its resources, just to cling on to power. And you can see that this kind of desperation is how they've acted throughout these past 3 years, with petty torture tactics, not allowing our father to even receive basic treatment, even when the Supreme Court mandates it. So it's the issue goes back to America. So it goes back to the current Pakistani. We did kind of attempt to speak to the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, and Obama when they were in charge. They offered little to support for us, not even to, suggest that, would we be able to get any sort of support to go to Pakistan to see our father on a kind of very low-key trip. They basically said that we would gain no support from them. They recommended we didn't do it, and that it would be dangerous, and if we did get imprisoned, as it was stated, then they wouldn't be able to support us. So there may be a difference now with Ed Miliband as the new Foreign Secretary. So we may go down that route. And yeah, so that's all I'll say.
Great, thank you. Zulfi, do you want to respond to the latter questions?
Yeah, I just want to say first, hi, and secondly is that PTI overseas is doing a very good job world over, from Spain to US to UK, everywhere, and we applaud them for this last 4 years actually that they've been holding protests. Sometimes they're great, sometimes the crowds die down, and then sometimes they're massive again. And we've had lots of signatures from MPs that have gone into Parliament with a different government, as Kasim has said. And we've had lots of signatures from the US team getting from congressmen and taking it into certain committees over there as well. The bottom line is that, unfortunately, a lot of the governments that we look upon as, as the beacon of democracy are selective where they feel that democracy actually is required, and they're selective where they feel that human rights all of a sudden is an issue. Pakistan is a population of 250 million people. We are supposed to be a democratic country. We're not a monarchy. We're not a dictatorship, apart from the few decades in between, and one that we're currently in. And the people's rights have been trampled all over the country, and that is also evident in data, from 85% of terrorism increasing since Imran Khan's government fell. You see every province in deepened trouble and terrorism and law and order. This is all due to trampling of human rights, justice systems collapsing, and democracy being trampled, and no real representation anywhere. So this has been put upon on different governments. Let it be at that time the Biden regime, and now the Trump regime, and let it be right now, previously the Conservatives, and now the Labour regime, and right now, as Kasim said, Ed Miliband. So hopefully we will be reapproaching everybody and keep pushing the issue. Our point is to never give up. Our point is to keep trying. We have good contacts within the Trump administration. We're trying them again. I think once we make a breakthrough, it will be public knowledge. I don't think it's fair to say who we're contacting, who we're pushing, because A, that's our strategy, and B, there's a level of maturity and confidentiality when you speak to people.
Thanks so much, Zulfi. We'll next turn to Talat Farouk, and then I'll next ask a question from Der Spiegel. So Talat Farouk, on to you, and please also first identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Talat Farouk from BBC. First question, Zulfi, to yourself. I mean, you've already answered this to a degree, but what are you doing to reach out to the political world out there to garner support? And is that support readily available because of the situation in Pakistan? Are they not willing to come forward to support you? Also, to Kasim and Sulaiman, a question that's also has been raised already, but you have a lot of young British Pakistani support for Imran Khan. What are you guys doing to reach out to these people, to the British Pakistanis who would probably like to see more of you being active in and around the country to garner that support and raise the issues that your father is facing?
Thank you, Talat. I would just say, like I said previously, that we are reaching out. We're doing our lobbying. But to answer the question in short, when you asked if the Western community has been responsive in terms of those who are in office, no, the answer is they haven't. I think every time you have a back channel meeting, they kind of tilt their head to the left and say, "Oh, it's so sad what's happening." We're talking to them behind the scenes. It's just not good enough. I'll be honest with you. It's not about them interfering in Pakistan and pushing themselves. It's about, there has to be some sense of, listen, this is a huge country. This is a powerful country. This is a nuclear country. This is a country that has a youth population of 65% above the age of 35. Imran Khan is the most popular leader. I don't think we need to mince our word the country has ever seen. And he is in prison, and everyone knows, for the most ridiculous of charges. Unfortunately, due to global circumstances and geopolitics and the conflicts around the world, everyone has kept has been very numb about it in terms of those who are in office. All we can do is keep knocking on doors and keep trying to wake them up and show people and try to prove to people that, look, Pakistan's a democratic country, and what's happening to the person who has literally a lot of people identify Pakistan with is behind bars. And not only is he behind bars, like I said, like both Kasim and Sulaiman has said, Jared has said, it's not us four sitting here today and saying it. It's been the UN in their legal opinion. It's been the Special Rapporteur on Torture. It's been Amnesty International. It's the Supreme Court of Pakistan. So it's not us four individuals who might be closely tied to him saying it. It's the largest independent bodies who are saying it. Yet you find the Western administrations absolutely numb on the issue, which is actually, it's very upsetting, and I think it's extremely disappointing.
Yeah, no, I would just further emphasize, as Zulfi said. I mean, the way in which Khan has been treated, undoubtedly, and the fact that it hasn't elicited the kind of global response that it should have, is a license to Pakistan with attack with impunity on his case, his wife's case, on the cases of others, right? And there's an enormous amount at stake here. I mean, Pakistan is a gigantic and incredibly important and influential global player in the region and in the world. And with Pakistan going the wrong way, the consequences are enormous and come in a wide array of different ways. Let me turn next to some questions asked by Suzanne Kobel with the German news magazine Der Spiegel. It's a multi-part question again, so I'm going to flip one piece of it to Kasim and Sulaiman, and I'll handle the other part of it, which relates to his physical and mental health and what's going on. But to Kasim or Sulaiman, or both of you, when was the last time you actually have seen or spoken with your father? Both, I think, is the question. What is your sense of his mental health, and how is he coping with the situation? And then lastly, what about his sisters, your aunts? Are they allowed to see him, and so forth?
So the last time we actually saw him was in November 2022, after the assassination attempt, when he was shot twice in the leg. We haven't been able to see him or go out to visit him since then. In terms of how we think his mental state, the last time we spoke to him was back in March, 6 months ago. We haven't been allowed any phone calls since then, despite the court mandating weekly phone calls. And in terms of what I would assess about his mental health, his mental state, on the phone, I suppose he doesn't want us to worry about him. So he sounds upbeat, he sounds positive and optimistic, but there's no doubt that the isolation, the solitary confinement is taking its toll on him, and not just that, the general conditions that he's being kept in. As we heard some quite shocking things from my aunt when she recently went to see him. She was the first family member who'd been able to see him for 10 months. And it did sound quite disturbing, some of the details of how he feels he's been treated. And as Zulfi said earlier, the fact that he feels there might even be an attempt to slowly kill him in prison with this treatment.
I'd add it's been extremely frustrating for us, partially because I've been getting messages consistently since the news came out, saying how glad I must be that he's now getting treatment, and how happy we are that he's being treated. And in reality, all we've heard over the last week is he's in desperate need of going to a doctor, of going to a hospital for a prolonged period. He isn't going to be going to a hospital. Instead, he had a hour checkup in a government facilities where with the establishment's people looking at him. And now and as well as that, he had an eye patch on during that time. He seemed disturbed. He said he seemed disturbed by the isolation and the treatment. It's horrific things to hear from us, and to have messages saying, how glad you must be. It's horrible to hear. So to speak to him would be an amazing thing. But as Sulaiman said, even when we speak to him, it's very hard to judge how he is, because of course in the 20 minutes, twice or three times a year that he gets to speak to us, he's going to be over the moon to be able to talk to us. And when we do speak to him, he speaks the entire time. He wants to give us life lessons. He wants to hear how we are, how everything is in the outside world. We don't get to ask about how he is or how he's feeling. He rejects any of those questions and wants to present a strong front. So it's very, very hard for us to judge how he is. This is why we'd love to see him. And more than anything, this is why we want him to get seen by independent physicians, independent doctors, and to be able to get serious treatment in in a neutral hospital. So for us, it's extremely frustrating. We have no idea really what his state is, but we know that from what our auntie said, it was not good.
Thanks so much, Kasim and Sulaiman. And this is brutal for families. I mean, Imran Khan might be well known to the world as one of the best cricketers of all time, as an extraordinary leader of Pakistan as prime minister, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, the most human of relationships is he's a father, right? And I can only imagine, as a father myself, the kind of enormous pain, Kasim, that you and Sulaiman are going through. It's just beyond brutal. And as bad as the torture is for the person in the cell, and what Khan has been subjected to, it's always worse for the families because he knows how he's doing from moment to moment, and you fear the worst, right? Every day, I have no doubt you wake up thinking about your dad, you go to bed thinking about your dad, right? And this is the entire family that's really being subjected to torture, not just Khan himself. I will, because the other part of the question from Ms. Coble was a request for further information about exactly how he's being mistreated. And so I was just jotting down a few notes and just want to run through very quickly so that you understand the scale and severity of what he's going through, why I've said this is one of the worst cases that I've seen. And so among other things, he's been projected to prolonged solitary confinement for years and confined to his cell at least 23 hours a day with no interaction with other prisoners or outdoor recreation. Extended solitary confinement is torture under international law on its own and on the face of it. He's in extremely restrictive physical conditions. His cell is about 1.8 times 2.4 square meters, which is basically like 7 by 7 feet. There's no windows or natural light or ventilation. There's inadequate artificial lighting, extreme heat in the summer and cold in the winter, stagnant air, insects, an open toilet area with only a low wall and no roof or door, and the cell's under 24-hour surveillance. He's also been subjected to virtually complete social isolation, not only not permitted to interact with other prisoners, but also not permitted to participate in communal prayers or Eid prayers. And he's had to pray alone while under surveillance. There have been repeated denials of restrictions and family visits, denials of visas and restrictions of family visits. As was just being discussed by Kasim and Sulaiman, restricted access to counsel, right? This is important because it affects both the conditions of his confinement and his ability to challenge his convictions in detention. The reality is that he's not had regular legal access. And this is, of course, after gigantic and indisputable and egregious due process abuses, including denial of counsel, inadequate time and facilities to prepare his defense, and an illegal secret court, based in his prison, which is really outside of the entire Pakistani, legal system. There's also been, repeated denials of adequate medical treatment, with obviously his vision having declined enormously. He's now lost about 85% of his vision in his right eye. And this was after many, many months of complaints were totally ignored. And this is obviously a very serious violation of his right to access to healthcare under both the Nelson Mandela rules, as well as under international law more broadly. There's been, of course, interference with his independent and personal medical care, as described. What's just happened in the last week, being diverted to the PIMS and having a government panel decide that all are paid for by the government, that he's just perfectly fine after a few hours of a very inadequate medical care, rather than having this independent panel set up as the Supreme Court ordered. His physical conditions of detention, has caused him nausea, weight loss, and severe vomiting. There's also, psychological mistreatment and intimidation that he's undergone. And more recently, in the last week, as was alluded to by Kasim and Sulaiman, Khan told his sister Uzma Khan when he saw her in PIMS that he'd been repeatedly subjected to torture in prison. And we don't yet know exactly what that entails because, of course, the visit to the government hospital was under close supervision by the government, and he was not allowed to speak freely with Uzma over the course of this time. So, it seems to me that when you look at all these things collectively and what has happened to him, that these are just flagrant, intentional, and egregious violations of Khan's fundamental human rights. A violation of his right to dignity, a violation of his right to be free from arbitrary detention and to not be treated as a political prisoner and imprisoned on the basis of fabricated evidence. And the conditions of his detention are horrific, deplorable, and also in flagrant violation of Pakistan's own constitution and laws, as well as the Nelson Mandela rules, and the rights to be free from torture provided both in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Convention Against Torture, which are two treaties that Pakistan is a party of. So we are coming close to the end of our time here. I believe, just see here, there's one last question here, and we're going to end promptly at 10:30. And it's a question for Zulfi from Mubashir Bukhari. I assume no relation, from Reuters. Do you see any possibility of reconciliation between Imran Khan and the establishment?
Look, I gave an interview to Reuters as well previously as well, and I stand by it that it's not about reconciliation. It's about you're dealing with two different set of men and you're dealing with two different ideologies. Imran Khan himself from prison has said many times that he wants to get on with life and he wants to get on with serving Pakistan. Pakistan's had a vicious circle for 80 odd years about going from civilian rule to a dictatorship, and then that ending very badly for the dictator, and then going to back to civilian rule, and so on and so forth. And he's not. If anyone thinks that he's the type that he's going to come out, and I get asked this when I travel the world by many people, especially business people, that will he come out and will we have to go through the same circle that he's going to be vindictive on the people that have treated him the way that he has been treated and all the brutality that's gone up on him? The answer is no, because Imran Khan is magnanimous. He's way bigger than any of these people's mindset goes. He's not vindictive, and he's not one that's going to put, like I said in your own Reuters interview, is that he will do whatever it takes to always keep Pakistan first, and he believes in the strengthening of institutions from judiciary to so on, and so as far as from his side, there's nothing from his side. There's the vindictiveness of one person, and that certainly isn't Imran Khan's side. He is the victim here. He is the one in prison. He is the one that is just part of one man's ego and one man's vindictiveness, which is now costing not only Imran Khan alone, but the entire country.
Thanks, Zulfi. We do have one last question here that we'll entertain from Ananya Deshpande. My apologies for the pronunciation. Journalist from India, and I think there are other questions. This person has two questions. One I think we've already answered, but the one that we haven't answered is, what's anticipated to happen from the Supreme Court process, and the fact that he hasn't obviously gotten the treatment that was ordered by the Supreme Court. What are the scenarios in the Supreme Court for how it might handle it, and what might that mean for his ongoing medical treatment?
I would just say quickly on that is, obviously, I don't want to speak for the court, but we've gone in for contempt. And, it's a 3-member bench, again, of the highest court of the land with its most senior judges. We expect, from the application that his sister has put in, to be very strong and stand by their decision and question and reprimand the government about why haven't they fulfilled every to letter and spirit to what they had in their judgment. And like I said, neither the medical board has been fulfilled in its quorum, including his doctor, neither the hospital that he was supposed to be sent to, neither has weekly calls, I think it was weekly or fortnightly, with his sons. I believe there was a meeting today and one of his sisters, Noreen Appa, was allowed in to see him. I haven't got any confirmation. I'm just looking through my phone and I believe that she has. But again, these are the things that the Supreme Court had put down, including speaking to his son, let alone access for them to come over and go see him. So, until every single thing that the Supreme Court has ordered is abided by, we will continue on doing what we're doing.
Thanks so much, Zulfi. And I'll just make one last note. on the Supreme Court. Obviously, I'm not licensed to practice law in Pakistan. We have very stellar Pakistani counsel that are not only incredibly distinguished, but also and doing their jobs as well as they can, but also put themselves in harm's way simply by representing Imran Khan. And what I would say is that there is a remedy for the Supreme Court in a theoretical sense. I'm not suggesting this is the likely outcome, but my own view is that this is something that should be discussed, which is that if the government refuses to follow the order that relates to relates to Khan and his medical conditions, the Supreme Court of Pakistan could look at the 2 sentences he's currently serving, which are both actively being appealed, and they could simply decide to suspend implementation of his detention pending the outcome of those 2 cases. And then the government would be forced to release him, right? And this is a way he could bring himself to medical treatment. So again, I'm not suggesting that this is the likely outcome here, but what I am suggesting is that this is a really important moment for the Supreme Court of Pakistan to assert its authority that it has under the Constitution of Pakistan to hold the executive accountable for flagrant violation and willful violation of its orders. So we'll have to see, obviously, what happens next in the coming days and weeks. With that, let me just bring this this press briefing to a close. I don't know if Kasim or Sulaiman, you have any last comments. I wanted to give you a chance to have the last word if you'd like one. You don't have to have a last comment. You've obviously said a lot over the last hour, but if you'd like to say something, let's have you do that. And then from there, we'll just wrap it up.
Yeah, I just want to say, if I'm almost certain the government will come out with some statement saying he's completely fine. We've checked him in our facilities. If that is the case, I would love to challenge them to show proof of that. Allow him to enter an independent hospital with independent physicians, so they can just have a completely neutral check to see what his condition is, put our minds at ease, and prove that what you're saying isn't another lie. So I think that's the only fair solution. And it's the only way to prove your point.
Sulaiman, do you want to have a last comment?
I've got nothing to add. I completely agree with that. Please just give us evidence that what you're saying is true, that he is in good mental and physical condition, and that he doesn't need treatment in a private hospital.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, everyone. We're going to conclude the press briefing now. Thank you very much for coming and for all the excellent questions. As soon as we have the video from Zoom, which will be in the next probably few minutes as it's processed, we'll post it both on YouTube, and then both Zulfi and I will tweet out the link to the video on our X accounts so that you can see the video as well, and feel free to circulate that to anyone else, any of colleagues of yours that might not have been here but might be interested in seeing it. And so again, thank you so much, everybody, and have a nice rest of your day. Take care.